I went on Toastmasters.org and I pulled up, sort of the anatomy of a club meeting from them. And they list 10 possible rules that you could have in a Toastmasters meeting. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about those different rules today. And specifically, I want to focus on the sort of assigned roles besides the speaker itself. And instead of me recounting and talking about each role on my own, I thought it'd be a great idea for us to bring in some of our club experts who have probably filled these roles many times over the years in our club and in others, so that we can have a nice panel discussion on the different Toastmasters meeting roles. So to introduce our panelists today, you see them in the spotlight, but we have 3 panelists, Dawn, Daniel, and Sandy. And what I'd like to do is just briefly invite our panelists to share in a sentence or two your Toastmasters history or experience, whether it's in our club or in others, and your favorite or your least favorite meeting role. So let's start with Sandy. Just give us a little background on your history and one of your favorite or least favorite meeting roles.
Thank you, Clark. I've been with the Thrive and Toastmasters Club since 2019. I actually gave a presentation in 2019. It'd been a while since I had done some public speaking, and I got super nervous, and it was actually a struggle to get through that presentation. And it was an eye-opening of, maybe I need to practice this a little bit more. I need to have regular practice sessions. So I joined the Thrive and Toastmasters and have been here ever since, and it's been great. I have served, this is my 3rd year serving as an officer in the club, and I've really enjoyed getting to know the other members. My favorite Toastmaster role, that's a tough one. I think it might be like general evaluator or Toastmaster. I really enjoy being able to provide some general feedback or even help to facilitate the meeting. Back to you, Clark.
And Dawn, how about you? I know you've been in more clubs than just ours, so share a little bit about your Toastmasters experience.
Actually, I've been in Toastmasters. I happened to look it up just the other day, since 1993. And I joined at another insurance company many years ago. Thank you. I've been president of 4 clubs and started a couple of clubs from organizations I went to work for. I've really enjoyed Toastmasters, and it has availed me the opportunity to speak at over 24 international conferences and made me comfortable speaking in audiences from anywhere to 10 people to 1,000. And I can really contribute that to Toastmasters. My favorite role when it comes to the meetings happens to be table topics. I enjoy figuring out interesting ways to make the group engaged, as well as coming up with clever topics. It's a challenge sometimes because you don't want to give people questions they can barely answer, but you also want to allow them to contain it into a mini speech. Hope that covered all your questions.
Yes, thank you, Dawn. And Daniel, let's turn to you. I know you've been in other clubs as well, so give us a little of your history.
Thank you, Clark. Yes, I did join a Toastmasters club while I was working at Northwestern Mutual. So it was another corporate club that I joined that was not open, at least not at the time. It might have changed since. But I was a member with them for about 3 years, and you see some of the old school Toastmasters acronyms behind my name. So competent communicator, competent leader, those are things of the past. Yes, I am a fossil and a dinosaur, but I was set on the path towards advanced leader, bronze, silver, gold, and then you ultimately would have moved towards a DTM, which is a distinguished Toastmaster. I have a long route ahead of me if I ever want to get to that place. I'm now on Pathways. So that is my new digital experience. The club that I was a part of was in person only, and it was pre-pandemic, so between 2016 and 2018. And we'd actually just begun talking about how we might include digital experiences in our club, despite us typically meeting in a conference room on site. For a variety of reasons, I did not end up staying at the club at the time, left and rejoined here, but I did serve as VP membership for the club back in the day. And in terms of the in-person experience, well, my favorite role would have been the Table Topics Master, but Dawn already gave a great description of why that's a favorite. So I'm going to go with my second favorite, which is the Speech Evaluator. I really enjoy looking at someone's speech from a variety of different angles, right? There's voice, there's your pitch, there's your volume, there's your physical presence, there's the use of space or not, whether you bring in visual aids or other objects. You know, so last week when I did table topics and I made a bunch of people chase an innovative object in their house, those are the kinds of things that I do enjoy. But as a speech evaluator, I also look for little tidbits, you know, and things that people use to make their speech more interesting. Least favorite, despite me being a son of a German teacher, the grammarian is still hard for me, simply because I do not know enough about grammar. At times I pick up on a really unique use of language. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know the word for it. But so that is still a challenging one. But between all the roles, yeah, table topics master and speech evaluator are probably my favorites.
Thank you, Daniel. So we have a lot, like I said, there could be up to 10 different meeting roles, and we have a limited amount of time here, but I thought it would be good to show sort of the top 7 or 8 meeting roles on a slide here. And what I did is I put them on a spectrum of intensity. And you can see from sort of low intensity to high, and how I would judge the different meeting roles along that line. You know, maybe when you join a club and you start out, you start in an easier low intensity role like the timer or the counter. And over time you work up in intensity to general evaluator, topics master, or Toastmaster, where those roles that may require more preparation or work in advance. Just to our panel, before we talk about each of these roles, do any of you see anything that should be shifted in this spectrum, or does it make sense to you?
No, I think this is delightful. And I like this approach, not only for new people to understand it, but also to help guide us when we're picking people to fill these roles. This is really great.
Clark, I actually have a little bit of a different scale that I use when helping new members sign up for education roles, and that I move general evaluator and topics master before speech evaluator. That sometimes it can be intimidating to have to give that speech evaluation and like identify what are those areas of feedback that are really helpful for people. In general, so I tend to put general evaluator and topics master before speech evaluator. So then speech evaluator and Toastmaster are the two high, like on the highest side.
That's a great point, Sandy. And I think we'll talk about that because each of those roles have different things that you would do before a meeting and after or during a meeting. And I thought of some of that preparation work as part of the quote unquote intensity for a meeting role. So I'm going to stop the screen share so it's easier for us to see all the people. And we're going to start by talking about the timer role. We're going to go from the bottom of the spectrum to the top. Maybe my hand should go this way, the bottom of the spectrum to the top. And so for the timer, what are some key points for a timer? You know, I brought with me a prop today. This is our old timer box. One of the light bulbs was broken and they moved from the old Thrivent building to the new one. But we had light switches on the back so you could turn on the green light, then the yellow, and so on. But here in a virtual environment, what are some of the key points for a timer to consider? Daniel, do you want to take that?
Sure. We've seen some great examples of how our timers are responding to the new world of joining meetings digitally, right? Via Zoom, Teams, and others. I've actually enjoyed the creativity that timers are bringing to the table when they get to pick their team's background. There are templates on the Toastmasters website, traffic lighting, red, yellow, green, things like that, borders in different colors. But it's actually really been fun to see people kind of put their own spin and flavor on it, where they find red, yellow, or green backgrounds.
So the virtual background is the way that our club tends to do the timing to indicate where somebody is in their speech. And just to explain the meeting role in a little bit more general terms, John, what are those colors and what do they mean for someone who's new to the timer role?
So the colors are red, yellow, and green. The green is the indicator of the beginning of your time zone of being done. So say you're speaking from 5 to 7 minutes. At 5 minutes, the green light will come on. At 6 minutes, the yellow light comes on, letting you know you're almost done with your time to finish up your speech. And at 7, the red light comes on and you're expected to wrap up in no more than 30 seconds. Otherwise, in a speech contest, for instance, you'd be considered overtime.
Thank you. One other trick that we sometimes use in our club is, because we're on Zoom, the raise hand feature is going to bring you to the sort of top of the Zoom window, and the timer will sometimes raise their hand so that they are more evident at the top of the screen for everybody paying attention. Otherwise, they may get lost in the shuffle of all of the club members on the screen. Thank you, Kyle, for doing just that. Let's move on to the ah counter. And Dawn, are you the ah counter today?
Yes, I am.
How have some of the other clubs that you've visited or been in managed the ah counter role? And do they have a bell, or do they do it more quietly? What are some of the different ways that an ah counter can work?
Fortunately, every club I've been involved in or have contributed to has a silent ah counter role. Like, I've heard of clubs where they ding the bell, and I was actually visiting one time where they did that. It was so distracting and disruptive. Now, it might really ping people to not use those crutch words, but you have to think about what are you focusing on for the meeting. And I think that that's more disruptive than helpful. But in the clubs that I've been in, there's the more silent role. And for our club, it's even nicer, I think, being able to just put it in the chat. And there's a lot of us today, so I apologize if I miss anybody. I'll try to hit the heavy hitters today. But one of the things that I've seen done in other clubs as well, and that we've used it a couple of times when we're short on people to participate in the meeting, and that's to combine the ah counter and the grammarian role, so that you come up with not only keeping track of the ahs, ums, so's, and buts, and I'm not counting those, you also jot down the elegant words that you hear people say. And so that can be combined as a role. But those are the ways that I've heard it. And then I have this sheet that I found, but in our club directory, we also have a little, I think when you were in person, you used to have a little sheet of paper. You could scribble down real quickly on the piece of paper, people's ahs, ums, and so's, and then hand them to the meeting as they were leaving the meeting. So we don't do that now. We do it virtually instead.
And one other question for you, Dawn, on the ah counter is how do you balance the sort of critical aspect of being an ah counter, right? Yeah, ringing a bell, we don't do that, which is nice. But how do you balance the fact that you're being critical of somebody? You said ah or you're using these crutch words, but make it this positive growth opportunity.
One of the ways we do that is sort of collectively answer the end of the meeting. Today, our big crutch word was so, and we used it 30 times, for example, or ah or Part of it is not making anyone feel singled out as being the only one who makes that mistake, but also it helps you realize this is what I need to listen for. And it's a challenge. I find this to me is the hardest role. I didn't answer that like Daniel did. The ah counter role is the hardest for me. You really are focusing on that instead of the rest of the content. So I find that distracting, but I'm trying to do a good job today.
Don mentioned that in some clubs they combine the ah counter and the grammarian, and the grammarian is the next role I wanted to talk about. Sandy, what makes for a good word of the day from a grammarian?
Thank you, Clark. That's definitely a good word of the day can sometimes fit in with the meeting theme. So it can be great as a grammarian to connect with your Toastmaster ahead of time to find out what is the word of the day. Thank you, Andrea. I love that. Something pronounceable. Yes, that is a good one. If you can't pronunciate, like if it's really hard to pronunciate, people tend to shy away from using it. Or if it's really far out in left field, very obscure definition, and it's like, how do I work that into everyday conversation? Can be hard to do it. So sometimes even a word that you hear of, you know of, but maybe it's not a common phrase. Try to help having that word that you can incorporate more often can be a great choice. But it can be really fun to incorporate with the theme, something that's not too obscure that you're like, how am I gonna ever incorporate this into a sentence? Last week, for example, we had thingamajig. Really fun word. It was definitely easy to incorporate. One I don't necessarily use a lot in my day-to-day vocabulary, so that was a great example. And then the one like today for Bill, excuse me if I mispronounce this, but the fabulous, great, also has an easy definition that we can incorporate. Delightful, joyous, that's easy to incorporate, but the fabulous, thank you, Bill. I think I still may have got that wrong, but I'm going to move on and send it back to you, Clark.
Thank you, Sandy. That was a frabjous answer, I would definitely say. And one other question for you on the grammarian is, what else should the grammarian be listening for? It's not generally just the word of the day, right?
Yes, thank you. They're also paying attention to any really good grammatical phrases or missteps. Was there the wrong word choice used? Was there a grammar mistake? And those can also, like the counter, be hard to pay attention for because you get so caught up in the content of what someone's saying, but really paying attention to what are the word choices that people are using. That's, I think, really important, as well as any just interesting words or phrases. What was something fun that someone used or had a really good vocabulary choice?
Thank you. So next on the list, and this is where we're talking about sort of that spectrum again, but I wanted to talk next about the speech evaluator. And Daniel, you had said that that's one of your favorite roles. So can you give us a little bit deeper of what the speech evaluator does both before a meeting and then during the meeting itself?
Gladly. Before I dive into that, I wanted to applaud you for your frabjous thingamajig Toastmasters lamp that you showed us today. That was really a fabulous device, frabjous device. The speech evaluator has the job to ensure that the speaker is prepared for the Toastmasters meeting. So they should generally check in with the speaker, understand the project, know the title, the description of the project, and form a bit of a relationship with the speaker who they may or may not interact with closely otherwise, to learn a bit about their objectives, things that the speaker might want the evaluator to pay particular attention to. All that is helpful work to do in preparation for the meeting. During the meeting, the speech evaluator then gets to look at the holistic picture of the presentation of the speech that the speaker delivers. What I mentioned earlier were some examples around vocal tone, pitch, volume, presence, choice words, but also the general structure of the speech. Does it have a clear opening? Is there a body? Like, does it kind of evolve a certain story arc? What is the content that gets delivered? And then do you have a meaningful closing or an ending? Maybe at times even with something that is a keyword or a phrase, something that you do want your audience to walk away with and remember. And after the speech has been delivered, the speech evaluator will then provide his, her, or their evaluation to the speaker and give them very candid feedback around the various aspects of the speech.
There's a filler word for you right there. We often hear about sort of a sandwich method for speech evaluation. Are you familiar with that, or you know, sort of a? Can you talk a little bit about that and how you might evaluate someone who is a brand new speaker differently than someone who has been in Toastmasters for 30 years?
Thank you for that call out. I can only reiterate that there is no judgment in Toastmasters, but there is feedback, and we like to share both positive feedback as well as opportunities for improvement. So the sandwich method that you just mentioned means that you're typically starting out with something that really stuck out as positive in the speech that was delivered. It could be the topic, it could be humor, it could be engagement with the audience, it could have been a novel, frabjous object, who knows. But we begin with that. We then share into opportunities for improvement. And depending on style, I've had some very direct critical feedbacks like, Daniel, take your hand out of your pocket. You always stand like that and it's so annoying. Okay, you take that, it's an observation. So you know, what you do want to do is not leave your speaker in shock, you know, or leave them kind of in pieces and shattered with critical feedback. So you do want to finish with a positive closing, right? But keep in mind that any and all feedback that is shared is meant to be constructive and help anyone in the club to develop and grow in their skills.
Thank you, Daniel. So we talked about speech evaluator. Next would be the general evaluator. Sandy, can you talk about how the general evaluator does work before the meeting?
Yes, I can. So one of the main roles of the general evaluator is to help ensure that all of the evaluation roles are filled for that meeting: timer, grammarian, counter, and speech evaluator. So encourage everyone to confirm their role in the meeting agenda on our Toast host site ahead of time. If you've seen that one of those 4 evaluationals has not been confirmed, it can be nice to reach out to them ahead of time just to confirm that they will be able to attend. If they can't, then you can work with the Toastmaster and helping in the person who originally had that role to find a sub and to have that filled. Really, as the general evaluator, you're helping the Toastmaster to make sure that all of the roles are filled for the meeting, focusing on the evaluation team.
Thank you. And Dawn, so Sandy talked about what a general evaluator does before a meeting. What do you look for as a general evaluator during a meeting?
Thanks, Clark. One of the things I like to pay attention to as the general evaluator are all the roles that are not formally evaluated. So you want to evaluate the timer. Did they have a good flip over of their time colors? Were they in tune with what was going on and not missing someone's speech time? The Toastmaster, this is actually an opportunity to consider whether the Toastmaster was well prepared and helped the meeting flow. So those are some of the things I look for, is the other key roles and making sure that they were fulfilled properly. And keeping the comments to those short, usually. Again, not trying to beat up on anybody, just point out opportunities for improvement.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, there's always opportunities for growth, and we're all learning here and trying different techniques. And this is a place that you can test that out, and the general evaluator can give you some feedback. Well, the color background you used wasn't good, or could have been better, this or that, whatever it may be. So next is table topics, and we're going to have table topics later in today's meeting. But Daniel, do you want to talk a little bit about the role of a table topics master, especially what they would do beforehand, before a meeting begins?
Sure. The table topics master needs to know if there is a specific theme or title for the Toastmasters meeting that occurs last week. I believe it was last week. It was innovation, and I happen to be table topics master. So I thought of questions to engage our willing participants, be they guests or members, and motivate them to participate in impromptu speaking. Table topics really do put you on the spot. You typically can't anticipate what question is going to come your way. And you have to find a way to create content for at least 1 to 2 minutes as a table topics participant, regardless of whether you can actually answer the question or not. Sometimes we get completely stuck. I have drawn blanks for table topics questions and I could not, there's nothing. It's just, I looked, I dug, it was just empty. Yet you try to still engage and provide an answer that meets the needs of the meeting. And it doesn't always have to be what's the question, there's one answer. You can make it what you want. It's like a blank canvas. You have 1 to 2 minutes to fill that space with something that may or may not quickly and promptly come to mind. So I enjoy the creativity and the flexibility that the topics master provides. And it's a really fun way to also get to know your club members.
And Dawn, with table topics, do you want to just give sort of a quick rundown of the way that we ask questions so that everybody can feel engaged, especially if they want to?
First, we let everybody volunteer. So the hand raising up thing is one of the things our clubs does so that we can only pick people that want to. And I recommend people try to choose someone who didn't have a speaking role in the club that day so that they get an opportunity. Another thing that we're looking for is, did they create an opening, body, and closing? So, and a lot of times people overlook that. This is a mini speech, like, could I do this on an elevator when the vice president of the company asks me what my role is? I think it's that opportunity to quick on your feet think. And what Daniel alluded to is, if you can't come up with a good answer, make something up or answer an entirely different question, but just field it in that 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's like a presidential debate, right? They ask you, what's your view on this? And you talk about that. That's okay in table topics. It's just giving you a chance to speak. So we're running short on time, but I think it's important that we continue for a few minutes. I've been messaging with our timer in the background. And our last major meeting role is the Toastmaster. And you could talk for hours and hours about the Toastmaster role, but Sandy, what do you think are some of the key responsibilities of a Toastmaster? Again, we'll start with before a meeting.
Thank you, Clark. One of the most critical is to send out the meeting agenda before the meeting. This is a great way to remind people like, hey, we have a meeting coming up and encourage them to come, but it also allows people to confirm the roles and as a reminder of, hey, you have a role coming up. It's also a good time to set the meeting theme ahead of time. So the rest of your club knows what's the meeting, the topics master can start creating questions, the grammarian can pick a word. Really encourage people to send out the agenda at least by Tuesday before the meeting. Monday's even best, gives time for people to confirm roles and select questions. But please, yeah, send out the meeting theme for my Toast House by Tuesday. And if anyone has questions on how to do that, a lot of our club members would be happy to walk you through that process.
Thank you, Sandy. And Dawn, you've been Toastmaster many times before, but when you're in the meeting itself, I mean, there's a lot that you juggle as a Toastmaster, right? What are some of you're not just going through the agenda. What other things are you thinking about?
A couple of things that are critical, even though there's a timer, you as the Toastmaster need to be paying attention to, are we running out of time? For example, we probably need, not picking any, about 15 minutes at the end of a normal meeting to get in all the roles. So when you're looking to that, you're watching to see, are we going to have enough time to flow the whole meeting? The other thing is trying to be aware of guests that come to the meeting so that you can introduce them and make them feel welcome. Making sure ahead of time, as Sandy alluded to, that everybody's there. Sometimes at the meeting or that right at the moment, someone can't show up. So you have to kind of Johnny on the spot, identify somebody in the meeting that might be able to step into that role and either privately chat them or just blatantly ask them right up front. And then I think you're trying to pay attention to who's getting left out. At least I am. If I feel like somebody's not getting to be involved in the meeting, try to figure out a way to reel them in.
Great points, Don. There's one other role that I didn't have us talk about, and that we experienced at the beginning of the meeting today, the upbeat update. That is something that our club invented, and there are two reasons that we have it. Do any of our panelists know what those two reasons are?
Give everybody a chance to get to the meeting in rolling.
That's right. So for one, it's sort of like a time filler while people are joining in. We also added it back when the pandemic started because everything seemed so scary and sour, and we thought, well, let's start our meeting with something upbeat. And it also gives the Toastmaster those 2 minutes of somebody speaking to do any of that chatting behind the scenes. Oh, I need a timer. I need an evaluator. The Toastmaster can use that time of the upbeat update to handle any last minute logistics that come into the meeting. I want to thank our panelists for their useful insights, and I wanted to share one other resource for you. There are actually 3 other resources if you want to learn more about the different meeting roles. The Toastmasters.org website has big, content on every single meeting role, checklists, things that you can go through. Our club website, we also have like a files section on the club website, and we have a document there sort of with our nuances on each meeting role. And then if you ever get a copy of the Toastmasters magazine or read it online, oftentimes they will have articles on the different meeting roles and different ways people might handle table topics or grammarian or unique words or any different types of thing along that line. So beyond this discussion that we had today, there are lots more resources that you can consider and consult as you take on a different meeting role. But with that, I want to thank you all again for joining the panel discussion today and pass it back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.